Hi, I'm Peter Green at petergreenguitar.com. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you're well. Today what I'm going to talk about is your very first guitar lesson. If you're an absolute, complete, total beginner, you've got a guitar, maybe someone gave it to you for Christmas, or you went out and bought one, and you're sitting there looking at it and you have no idea what to do with it. So, there's a lot of material around for advanced guitar players. If you want to learn to play like Eddie Van Halen and play tapping solos or complex jazz, there's a lot of that out there. But there's less material about absolute basic beginner guitar. And that's what I'm going to cover a bit of today. So, first of all, when you get a guitar, you want to look at the parts of the guitar, become familiar with it. So basically with a guitar, we have a body here, a neck, and a head. All right, I'll take my tuner off. So the head of the guitar is where the tuning pegs are. The neck of the guitar is where the frets are, these metal things that go across here. And the body of the guitar has several features. It has a bridge, which the strings attach to on this side. It also, some guitars have a pick guard and a sound hole. Now this is an acoustic guitar. If I picked up one of my electrics, there'd be no sound hole, or there'd be a different sound hole. A classical guitar is slightly different too. It has nylon strings, but this is just a basic steel string acoustic, which many people start with. Okay. This little area right here is called the waist of a guitar. And it's kind of patterned after a violin. If you think of the shapes of violins, they have this narrow waist, and that's usually what sits on your knee there. Okay. You can use a strap to hold the guitar. If you're having trouble keeping the neck up because you want it elevated a slight bit, you can put a guitar strap on, and that'll hold the guitar up if you tighten it. With my young students, they have the biggest problem. If you get a child who's 6, 7 years old, they're sitting there and the guitar's doing this, and and they can't even hold the darn thing. So my first job with those students is just to get them to sit still and hold the guitar. But most older people don't have that problem. All right. So the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to tune the guitar. Now, I'm going to have a separate video on tuning, but there's a lot of information out there on how to tune the guitar. But again, I'm going to cover that in another video. For now, let's not worry about it being in tune, but just keep in mind that if it's not in tune, it's going to sound horrible. If you pick up a guitar that's out of tune, you're going to play a chord, and it doesn't matter what you play, it's going to sound horrible. Okay, so we'll get into that in another video. So let's talk about now what you want to learn and what do you want to think about when you're first starting to play. And if there's any criticism I would have for some teachers, even some method books, is that they go way too quickly. When you're just doing this at the beginning, you need to go slowly. Otherwise, you're overwhelmed. And I've had a lot of students come to me over the years that took lessons somewhere else for, 6 months or so, and they come to me and they're just totally overwhelmed. They just have no idea what they're doing. I've had teachers that show students complex scales up and down the neck in the first few weeks. Well, they can barely play one chord, these students, let alone play complex scales. So we just want to take it slowly. The first thing that we're going to work on is the basic things that we need to play the guitar. Now, there's many subdivisions of these topics that I could get into, but this is just the generalized view. Number one at the top, you'll see motor skills. So motor skills is just simply your strength, your coordination, your stretch, how you play the instrument physically, because the instrument is a physical thing. Any instrument is, even your voice. It's a physical thing. It's something you have to practice repetitively in order to develop your ability to play it. So guitar is not one of those things like, for instance, I don't know, some topics in school, history. You could not do your homework all week and then cram on the last day before the test and go in and take the test and get through it. But with guitar, you've got to have a regular practice schedule. That's the most effective. Although I will say I've had students over the years that never practiced and still made progress, but that's a whole nother story. But to develop the motor skills and the strength and coordination, it's just something you need to do. And students always ask, well, how much? How long? And I would say at least 15 minutes a day, 20 minutes. If you're really busy, or maybe you're really young, maybe 10 minutes is enough. You just need to pick it up every day and do a few things. You don't need to sit there for 8 hours a day and play. Now, certain players like Tommy Emmanuel, if you're not familiar with him, look him up online. He treats his practice as training for the Olympics because he's a world-class player. If you want to attain that level, well, that's eventually what you're going to do. You're going to have the guitar in your hands all the time. But for most people who want to enjoy playing music and hopefully share it with others, a little bit of practice. If you could swing a half an hour, that's even better. What you're going to find, though, at the beginning is your fingers are going to hurt. The tips of your fingers are going to get sore because you have to develop calluses. And until you develop them, it's going to be a little uncomfortable, especially on a steel string. However, if you don't practice, you won't develop the calluses. It'll never happen. So you have to think about that. If your fingers start hurting a little too much, take a break and come back to it later. Okay? So the next thing here is music theory. Now, theory is something that I get into with students, but down the road a bit. The first thing I'm trying to do is get their motor skills working. Theory is basically how music works, learning everything from how the notes go up in order, sharps and flats, keys, what does it mean when you play in a key of music, what notes fit into a key, how do you figure that out? How do you figure out what chords fit into a key? Because certain chords work well together. There's other chords that don't work together nearly as well. There's a mathematical formula for all of this. And in a book I bought on music production years ago, written by Quincy Jones, the great producer, he said, there are two absolutes in the world, music and math, and they go hand in hand. So as you continue your music training, you find out how mathematical music really is in all kinds of ways. And then I get students that say, well, I hate math. Well, you're going to learn to like it a little bit more, I think, by playing the guitar and understanding how it works. But that's something we'll get into down the road. The next thing is ear training. So the one thing that music has that's learning to play music, that is, has that's different than, say, a sport. A sport requires physical endurance, strength, the coordination, all the things that playing an instrument does. It also requires some theory. You know, if you're a quarterback on a football team, you have to understand the plays and what's going on and what the defense is doing. You know, you have to read the defense. If you're a pitcher on a baseball team, you have to know all the different pitches you can throw and when to throw which one and how to follow what the catcher's telling you. I mean, if you're in the field on a baseball team, when somebody hits the ball to you, you have to know, where do I throw it? You know, depending on the situation. So there is a lot of knowledge that you have to have playing sports, but you also have to have those motor skills. But in music, you also need to train your ear so that you can hear things. So people say to me, well, sure, I can hear things. If I couldn't hear things, I'd be deaf. Well, that's true. But it's being able to hear when you hear this and say, oh, that's a C. Now, you need to have perfect pitch to do that all the time. But if I tell you this is a C and then I play another note, eventually you'll say, oh, that's an E. Oh, that's an F. or excuse me, that's a D, that's an E. I'm messing up my notes. That's an F. So when you hear a song, here comes the bride, here comes the bride, and you hear bum, 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 you're going to say, oh, that's, if the first note is C, the next note is F. And then da, da, oh, that's a G note. So you'll learn things like that, and you'll learn how to hear them. Now, I get people all the time that say, well, I'm tone deaf. I can't learn any of that. So I give them one simple test. Here's a note. Here's another note. Which one is higher? I'm sure 99.5% of you will say, oh, the second one was higher. Well, then you're not tone deaf. If you were tone deaf, those two notes would sound the same. There'd be no difference. So you're not tone deaf. Trust me. Very few people are. But, you know, some are, and it's kind of like being colorblind. You know, sometimes you see shades of colors, but you can't tell what the colors actually are. Another thing is we hear in color, at least I do, musically. I hear notes in color. A whole nother topic. All right, let's get to the next thing, reading. Now, reading is something that's usually accomplished through basic method books like Hal Leonard, Mel Bay, Alfred's, if you've heard of any of those. It's an interesting thing because on one hand, it will really help you with things like timing. It'll help you to learn the notes on the guitar. It'll help you with many things. On the negative end of it, it can be very tedious, and you're playing, you know, the Yellow Rose of Texas and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So for many students, those are not the pieces of music that they really want to play. But everybody has a different tolerance for method books. Some people take to them and enjoy the rigorous routine of the method books, and other people don't. The other thing in the guitar world, as you may know, is many guitar players do not read music. Jimi Hendrix, I don't think, read music, or Eric Clapton, or a lot of these guitar players who you would think might read music, a lot of them don't. Tommy Emmanuel, who I've studied with over the years, and again, if you don't know him, go look him up on YouTube here. He cannot read a note. You put a piece of music in front of him, he's clueless. Stevie Ray Vaughan could not read a note. So what I'm trying to say is you do not need to read standard notation in order to play the guitar, especially contemporary guitar. Now, if you tell me I want to learn classical guitar, you're probably going to have to read because most of the literature is written out. Even jazz guitar, most jazz guitar players are excellent readers, not all of them, but aside from those things, you can get away without reading. So that's something that's optional. The last thing that I always tell everybody is repertoire. What is repertoire? You've probably heard the word. It's just pieces of music that you can play. It's just knowing songs. Oh, I could play Brown Eyed Girl. Oh, I know that one. I could play Sweet Home Alabama. Oh, I can play that. Well, having a collection of songs that you can play, whether it's contemporary, classical, whatever style you're interested in, is very important because that's the reason you're playing guitar. You're not playing to do exercises, scales, theory, all of that kind of stuff. It's useful and it's necessary, but that's not why you're playing. You're playing to play music. So as soon as we can, I get students into playing songs, playing pieces of music that they can enjoy. And one of the greatest things about music is it makes you feel something. You feel an emotion. I remember being a kid and the Beatles came to America and I heard, "It's been a..." and then instantly, oh my God, I was just like alive hearing that. It just struck me like incredibly so. In fact, that's really what inspired me to become a professional musician. But when you play for somebody, you're trying to make them feel something. Tommy Emmanuel said in one of his workshops, when a person asked him, "How does the guitar work?" Well, we all thought he was going to give a technical dissertation on the guitar and the way the strings vibrate and the notes. And he held the guitar up and he said, I'll tell you in one sentence how the guitar works. I play this and you feel good. And there was silence. He said it again. I play this and you feel good. People had to digest that because it wasn't what they expected to hear. And he said, folks, that's the whole point of this. That's what it's all about. He said all of the things we've got to do in between to get our fingers moving and learn what we're doing, he goes, they're just necessary things that we have to go through, but the whole point is to play something and make somebody feel good. And I just thought that was a great way to sum it up. Now, one last thing I want to say about playing, and that is there are many elements of playing, melody, harmony. The most important thing I feel is rhythm, especially at the beginning. Timing and groove. If you don't have good timing and good groove, no matter what you play, it doesn't sound like music. So if I did this and I played, you might say, wow, that guy knows a lot of chords. Look at that. But does it sound like music? Not really, because there's no beat to it. And just about every kind of music has a beat. But if I was a very basic player and I only knew two chords, or one or two chords, maybe an E, maybe an A, I could do this. And you hear that boom. You hear that beat, and that's what makes you respond to the music. So that's one of the things you want to develop early on. There's something called a metronome, which we'll work with to help you develop that, but you always want to be aware of that. And many times in the lessons, when my students play something and then I play it and they say, oh gosh, you played it so much better than me, what was I missing? A lot of times it was the timing. So you really want to be aware of that. Here's the first exercise to work. Now, if you have a pick, just hold the pick, something like this. We'll talk more about that as we go along. And I just want you to do this. This is the sixth string. The thin one is the first string. I just want you to play with downstrokes the sixth string 8 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now go to the next string, the fifth string, 8 times. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Fourth string, 8 times on every string. Now you don't even have to do it this fast. If you find that, oh gosh, I can't play that fast, slow it down. Slow and steady. 1, 2, 3, 4. As slow as you need to do it to get it accurate. When you get up to the first string here, now I'm just going to speed up. Go back to the second one, and then the third one, and so on and so forth till you get back to this, and you could just do it in a loop. All right, and again, I'm playing some of these things fast just to get through them, but you can do them nice and slow. And if you can do that, try 4 times on each string, then 3 times on each string, 2 times on each string, and 1 time. So by the time you get to 1 time, you're just doing that. And there's one more thing. Don't look at your hand. So don't sit there and do this. There's too many things, especially if you're reading music, that you have to look at when you play. You're looking at the music. Sometimes you're looking at your left hand. You can't be looking at your right hand and your left hand and the music, and you just can't do it. And I'll also say too, looking down too much. If you're playing in a band on stage, it looks pretty boring to just watch the guitar player with his head down all the time. So with the right hand, you're trying to just develop the ability to feel where the strings are. It's going to be a little tough at times. One last thing, try to keep your arm and your wrist in a straight line. Don't play with your wrist out like this. Many beginners try to do that. Okay, so let me just show you here. So you don't want to do this. All right, whoops, don't want to do this. You want to have your hand straight, your arm straight. Okay. All right, there you go. That gets you started. And listen to music too. Part of playing is listening to music, so don't be afraid to put on any kind of music you like. It could be guitar music or even other instruments. That's okay. Just listen to a lot of music. It will really help you. All right, very good. And if you enjoyed this video, please ring the bell and subscribe to my channel. I very much appreciate it. And have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.